Grandview Kids. Every child and youth living life at their full potential. Grandview Kids is proud to provide foundational family services through the Ontario Autism Program.
Hello, my name is Julia Robotham. I am a speech-language pathologist with Grandview Kids. I am a woman and my pronouns are she, her. I have brown eyes and light brown hair. Today I am wearing a white t-shirt and I am sitting in my office with a virtual background of clouds behind me. Welcome to Communication Success. This is part of the Foundational Family Service Offerings hosted by the Autism Services team at Grandview Kids. I will be presenting the first half of this workshop, and my colleague Julie Close will be presenting the second half of this workshop. Julie is an autism therapy assistant with the Autism Services team at Grandview. We would like to acknowledge the lands which we are gathered on today. Grandview is proud to acknowledge the lands and people of the Mississaugas of Scugog Island First Nation, which is covered under the Williams Treaties. We are situated on the traditional territory of the Mississaugas, a branch of the Greater Anishinabeg Nation, which includes Algonquin, Ojibwe, Ottawa, and Potawatomi. As previously mentioned, this workshop is part of the Foundational Family Service Offerings hosted by the Autism Services team at Grandview Kids. Foundational Family Services are available to persons under the age of 18 and their families, registered with the Ontario Autism Program. We wanted to thank you for taking the time out of your day to attend today's workshop. We will start today by describing applied behavior analysis, and we will then give a brief overview of communication and social interaction skills. Then we will discuss strategies that you can be using with your child to increase communication skills. We will then help you identify how and why your child communicates and specific strategies that you can be using with your child. Finally, we will talk about working with your child at home. Applied behavior analysis is the science which tactics derived from the principles of behavior are applied systematically to improve socially significant behavior, and experimentation is used to identify the variables responsible for behavior change. In our program, we use principles of learning to help teach your child new skills. We also set specific goals and take data to measure your child's progress towards these goals. This data helps us determine if goals have been mastered or if any adjustments need to be made. Communication is an interaction between a speaker and a listener, and it can take many different forms. We can communicate in many ways, such as talking, using gestures or facial expressions. We can also communicate for many reasons, such as to make a request, to make a comment or a protest, or to greet, or even to ask a question. There are many ways to communicate and many reasons why we may be communicating. Here we see 4 pictures of children communicating in different ways and for different reasons. In the first picture, this child appears to be using her voice to talk or yell into a microphone, and she may be doing this to gain someone's attention or to share some important information. In the next picture, this child appears to be using sign language, and it looks like he is making the sign for help. The next picture is of a communication system known as PECS, or the Picture Exchange Communication System, and this is an example of a communication book. Children using this specific communication system can exchange pictures with others to communicate. In the last picture, this child is pointing to communicate. He may be pointing to request or to show someone what he sees. As you can see here, there are many areas of communication. This workshop will focus mainly on interaction language and early social pre-language skills. Interaction can be divided into earlier social interaction skills known as pre-language skills and later social language skills. Early social interaction skills include skills like attention, eye contact, turn-taking, and later social skills include skills like initiating and maintaining conversation by asking questions and making comments. Language can be divided into receptive language skills and expressive language skills. Receptive language skills involve your understanding of language and include skills like understanding concepts, questions, and directions. Expressive language skills involve your ability to use language and include skills such as using gestures, signs, words, longer utterances, and grammatical sentences to communicate. Other areas of communication include auditory skills, early literacy skills, stuttering, voice, and speech production skills. Speech production skills involve your child's ability to clearly produce speech sounds in words and sentences and can be divided into articulation, phonology, and motor speech. Social interaction skills are a very important component of communication. In order to communicate with another person, we need to be aware of the other person and pay attention to them. Examples of social interaction skills are attention, listening, and turn-taking. Once an interaction is established, we then have the opportunity to continue the interaction and further increase our child's communication skills. Here are some examples of social interaction skills. Attention. Attention includes your child's ability to stay at a specific activity for a certain length of time, or their ability to attend and listen to you when you are calling their name or talking and interacting with them. Joint attention is the child's ability to share attention between another person and an object in an attempt to show them something or share an experience with them. An example would be if your child sees a jack-in-the-box pop up and then they look at you to get your attention, and then they look back at the jack-in-the-box in an attempt to share this with you. Eye contact involves your child's ability to look at you when they are communicating with you and interacting with you. Play involves your child's ability to play appropriately with a variety of toys or physical games. Turn-taking involves your child's ability to share a toy with another person or take turns with another person in an interaction, such as taking turns asking for more bubbles in a bubble routine. In this activity, the parent takes a turn blowing bubbles and takes a turn by asking for more bubbles. They may ask for bubbles verbally or non-verbally. These are all strategies that can be used to improve your child's communication skills. We will be talking about each of these in more detail in the next few slides. Try to get to your child's level and get face-to-face with them as much as possible. This is an ideal position because your child is able to see your face, and this may help them better pay attention to you and the words that you are modeling for them. This also allows them to see how you are moving your lips, tongue, and jaw to produce different speech sounds. If you are looking at your child, this allows you to attend to how and why your child is communicating so that you can then respond appropriately. In the first picture, the mother is down at her child's level and they are face to face with each other and looking at each other. In the second picture, the mother is sitting next to her child and they are not face to face. Although the mother may be looking at her child, he does not seem to be looking right at her. Although we may feel the need to anticipate our child's needs, it is important to wait, listen, and look at your child to give them an opportunity to communicate with you. You can watch to see what your child is interested in, if they are using any words, gestures, signs, or facial expressions, and you can listen for any sounds and words. Waiting and paying attention to your child can help you determine how and why your child is communicating with you so you can respond appropriately. Attend to your child to see what they are interested in and move on to a new interest if necessary. If your child produces a word or sentence incorrectly, model this back to them in a natural way and emphasize the correct speech sounds and/or grammar that they initially had difficulty with. Your child does not have to imitate you, but immediately hearing the correct model can be helpful. Model the word or words that you think your child would be using if they could. For example, if your child gives you a closed box of cookies because they want you to open this for them, you can model open or help and wait 4 to 5 seconds to see if your child will copy this. If your child does not say the word, open the box for them, but you can model the word again the next time your child asks you to open the box of cookies. To help increase your child's utterance length, you can always be modeling back your child's utterance and adding a few words. For example, if your child says open, you can model open the bag, or if your child says cookie, you can model yummy cookie. You can also be modeling simple, specific, and functional language for your child, so your child is learning new vocabulary that they will be motivated to use. For example, instead of saying the ball went over there, you could comment the ball went under the table. If you ask too many yes and no questions or who, what, where, when, why, how questions when you are interacting with your child, this may put some pressure on your child and they may leave the activity, which will end the interaction. You want to keep the interaction going. You want to keep it natural, so try balancing your questions and comments. Try making comments instead of only asking questions. For example, you could say, I see a pink pig. He says oink oink. He's eating a tomato. Making comments can be a nice way to model language for your child without putting pressure on them to always respond. Sometimes you can wait for your child to communicate, but waiting may not always be enough. In these situations, you can create an opportunity for your child to communicate. You can do this by putting a motivating item in sight but out of reach, so your child will need to ask for your help. An example of this is if you put their favorite snack on a high shelf to encourage them to ask for your help to access these. You could also put toys or snacks in a closed, clear container, so your child may need to ask you for help opening this. You can also hold on to a bag of goldfish crackers or blocks or puzzle pieces and limit access to these preferred items by giving your child a few goldfish crackers at a time, or by giving them 1 or 2 puzzle pieces at a time to give your child the opportunity to ask for more. You can interrupt a chain by pausing within an activity, such as blowing bubbles, and waiting to see if your child will ask for more. You can also stop and start within an activity, such as holding your child for a brief moment when pushing them on the swing, to see if they will ask you to continue. You can also play with items in novel ways, such as putting Mr. Potato Head's hat on your head to see how your child will react. You can also play with hard-to-operate toys, such as wind-up toys or bubbles, to encourage your child to ask for help. Another fun way to create an opportunity for your child to communicate is to be silly. Silly pictures such as these can be a fun and motivating way to encourage your child to comment and have a conversation with you about what is silly. In order to keep your child motivated, use highly preferred items when interacting with them. You can do a preference assessment by taking a variety of toys out and watching to see what your child is the most interested in. You can then continue to engage in this highly preferred activity with your child. It's important to be aware that your child may find one thing motivating one day and then find a different toy or activity motivating the next day. Also, If your child has continued access to a preferred toy, after a while, they might not find this toy as motivating, so it can be a good idea to limit access. You can use daily routines to work on your child's communication skills. It is beneficial to work on your child's communication skills within daily routines because your child is familiar with these routines and they know what to expect. There are many examples of routines, including daily routines like bath time, getting dressed, play routines like peekaboo or bubbles, and songs like The Wheels on the Bus or If You're Happy and You Know It. To use a routine to work on your child's communication skills, begin and end the routine the same way each time, and keep the routine consistent by using the same words and actions throughout. Keep the activity going for as long as you can. Once your child is familiar with the routine, plan what their turn will be. Will you expect them to fill in a word or complete the actions during a song like Wheels on the Bus? Will you expect them to request for more when you are blowing bubbles? Will you expect them to cover your face or their face while playing peekaboo? Once your child is consistently taking one turn in a routine, think about a different turn that your child could take in that routine, or different words that you could be modeling within that routine. Here's an example of how you can adapt a play routine to work on your child's communication skills. You can begin the game the same way by showing your child the blanket and introducing the game by saying something like, "Let's play the blanket game." Use the same language and actions within the routine so you can say, "Swing, swing, swing, down," while swinging your child back and forth in the blanket and then putting your child down. Keep the routine going by using an excited voice and leaning in and waiting after you have stopped the game and laid the blanket down to see if your child will ask you to continue by maybe bringing the blanket to you. Plan your child's turn. So for example, in this activity, you're expecting your child to bring you the blanket after you stop swinging them.
Hello, I'm Julie Close, Autism Therapy Assistant, and I will be covering the second half of this presentation, beginning with identifying how and why your child communicates. So usually we see 4 categories of communication skills, and our next slides will take a closer look at each one individually and explain them in more detail. Our first stage is does not send a message on purpose. So your child is not purposely trying to communicate and intentionally send a message to you. Secondly, child asks for things intentionally. So now we see them move on to that intentional phase where they are attempting to send a message on purpose. The third stage is shared interest. So not only are they sending messages on purpose, but they are engaging with you in a variety of ways. And we'll talk more specifically about what this looks like in the upcoming slides. And finally, your child will have short conversations about many things and topics of interest. As we look at each section more closely in the upcoming slides, start to think about which category best matches your child, and we'll also cover what some great next steps could be to encourage further language development. So the key word for this section of does not send a message on purpose is intentionality. At this point, your child is not intentionally sending a message to you. So for instance, if your child does not fully understand how to send a message, you could be playing with toy trains together and maybe your child grabs that toy train. And so you interpret, oh, my child wants this train and he's requesting my train just by taking it from me. Or your child might protest and communicate their wants and needs by crying. Even though they're not using any words, they are still communicating with you. And over on the right column, it gives a variety of examples of how your child might be unintentionally sending messages. It would be great to see your child begin to enjoy a wide variety of different toys and activities. Of course, all children have their favorite toys. However, if your child mostly plays with cars and building blocks, maybe put those away for a few days and encourage that they play with something else, like Play-Doh or pretend food toys. For instance, if your child doesn't have much of an interest in books, for example, maybe introduce some motivating books about cars. Take, for instance, books with buttons that make car sounds, or books that have lift the flaps that could keep your child's hands busy. Increasing the intentionality of sending messages or making requests on purpose, such as help, go, and open. Noticing you more often or increasing their eye contact with you. Tolerating you joining in on their play activities instead of just preferring to play alone, which we'll talk about further in the upcoming slides. Remember to consider the strategies we talked about to help with moving on to these next steps. In this next section, we see that children are purposely requesting or protesting to communicate their wants and needs. Sometimes we see this by children taking our hand and placing it on a container that's hard for them to open independently. Or they may pull your hand and guide you to the front door and place your hand on the doorknob to indicate that they want to go outside. Making sounds like when standing in front of a treat cupboard to request a snack, or approximations of words like do for juice to request a drink. Some of the key words we like to encourage when children are beginning to request are words such as help, open, go, and more. If you point to an object and say something like, your shoes are over there, do they look in the direction that they're pointing to? And will they walk in that direction to retrieve their shoes? Gestures such as pointing to show you something of interest, like a plane in the sky or a big dog. And finally, that joint attention piece where your child looks at you, then at the object, and then back to you, as if to say, hey, are you seeing this too? A nice next step would be for those messages to be sent more frequently when requesting a snack, a drink, more, or for an activity to happen again, like singing their favorite song or tickles again. Increased eye contact when sending those messages would be a great next step. If you find that eye contact is difficult for your child, a great tip is to try and hold toy items beside your eyes to try and draw their eye contact up to your face. Trying to copy words like bear, juice, or using more gestures such as pointing or waving hello or goodbye, or signs like more. And then we have a few strategies that could be used here. I'd like to point out, for creating an opportunity, you could place snack in a container that's too hard for your child to open themselves, but just hand it to them and say, here's your snack. And if they start to struggle with opening it, you could place your hand out and model help. You need help. Maybe next time your child might bring you a little package of fish crackers that they can't open. And again, you're going to create an opportunity for them to try and request help. Typically, the rule of thumb with requesting is to model it about 3 times for your child with different tones of intonation. Help, help, help. Wait, and then give them the item after the 3rd time. We don't want to see them get too frustrated, but at the same time, we do want to give them enough time to try and attempt to say that word. Sometimes we classify this next section as your child being an early communicator, and they will connect with others by sharing interests. When someone walks into the room and they acknowledge their presence by waving and saying, hi. Secondly, they'll respond to questions like, where's your sister? And maybe say, at school. They will seek information such as, where'd daddy go? And responds when I point by looking in the direction that you're pointing to. draws attention to things or people like airplane or daddy home. Responds to comments, I like your Paw Patrol shirt, and your child responds, chase. And the how column is very similar to the previous slide of how we see this happening. So possible next steps are to encourage comments on what they see using words or phrases such as dog, fast bike. And you can expand on those comments to make complete phrases such as, yes, that is a big dog. And that bike is so fast. Zoom. Taking more back and forth turns in conversations to keep it going. And those phrases become longer and are more grammatically correct. This is where we want to remember the strategies of commenting rather than questioning. So instead of asking, are you working on your puzzle? And their only response is to give a yes, you can make a comment. Whoa, you're working so hard on that puzzle. Looks like you're almost finished. And maybe they'll respond with something like, 4 pieces left. It's so easy. Using language at their level. So if your child is using 2-word phrases like more juice, my ball, or no mummy, then you'll want to model 2-word phrases as well, such as help me, all done, and clean up. So if your child attempts to imitate your phrase, then it is at your child's language level and it's easy enough for them to do so. Instead of anticipating your child's needs and giving them something, let's create an opportunity for them to communicate. For example, I am encouraging children to request using a 2-word phrase such as help me, and sometimes I'll put their shoes up on a shelf that's too high for them to reach it by themselves and wait to see what happens. Most of the time, I will even say to them, go ahead, go get your shoes. And one time I was so surprised when my little friend didn't request help me, but instead he used another beautiful 2-word phrase. He said, can't reach. And then he said, too high. This is creating an opportunity for a child to communicate with us. In our final section, we see children talking about a variety of things, such as events that are going to happen, such as I'm going to McDonald's for lunch tomorrow, or events that already happened, such as swimming at Grandma's was so fun. Sometimes children will start talking about their feelings and dislikes and likes, such as I'm scared of big dogs, too loud. We also like to see children expanding to talk about a range of different topics, as we know that sometimes children will take a particular interest in one topic and will talk about it at length. If your child has taken an interest in trains and can tell you everything there is to know about trains, then maybe introduce another topic to focus on, such as ocean animals, and read books about them so your child can share new information about a new topic. Children will also start to ask questions and gain information such as, where'd Daddy go? And then wait for a response. Daddy's at work. Coming home soon? Yes, Daddy will be home at 5 o'clock. I play trucks with Daddy. And there are some nice back and forth short conversations happening. A great next step would be to expand the back and forth conversations by keeping it going. Continue to make comments to encourage your child to add more information. Encourage your child to talk about past events, as this helps to increase their skill to sequence the events that took place. For example, when a parent says to their child, tell Grandma where we went on the weekend, will your child be able to express the sequence of events? First, we went to Tim Hortons. Next, we went to the playground, and then we fed the ducks. Or if your child scratched their elbow and a friend asks, how did you hurt your elbow? Will your child be able to explain, I was riding my scooter, but it was too fast and I fell on the sidewalk. This includes the ability to ask questions and to make comments and take back and forth turns during conversations. So we've covered a lot of information in this workshop, and we realize that sometimes it can be overwhelming when trying to implement the content at home. So we like to encourage parents to pick one strategy to focus on. You could refer to the parent handout, which summarizes all of our strategies, and decide which one you're going to focus on when interacting with your child. If you decide to choose the strategy of commenting rather than questioning, then focus on how you're going to make comments while you and your child are interacting. For example, if your child shows you a picture they created with crayons or markers, instead of asking, "Did you draw an airplane? And is this the sun?" try to make a comment instead, like, "This looks cool, tell me about your picture." Or, "I like how the sun is yellow and orange, that makes it look really hot." Think about the next steps that you could be taking to increase their language, such as adding words to a routine, adding one extra word to their phrase like "big purple ball," increasing their tolerance to you joining in on their play activities, and increasing gestures such as pointing to pictures in a book. You know your child best, so when you're deciding to try one of the strategies at home with your child, you may want to keep in mind some of the factors listed here and try to choose the best optimal time. So for instance, if you know that your child can be pretty grumpy first thing in the morning, then you may not want to pick this time to try and focus on one of these strategies. If siblings are around and they're making a lot of noise and playing with loud musical toys, then this might be too distracting for your child, and you may want to wait until there are less distractions, or when you might have some one-on-one time with your child when a younger sibling might be napping. A parent actually gave some great feedback and mentioned that she put a post-it note by her child's play area as a reminder to try a strategy when they're playing together. Setting a reminder or an alarm on your phone to try a strategy when interacting with your child. We realize that everyone is busy and life can get hectic with the little ones. And you may be thinking, some days I don't even have time to sit down with my child and play with them. But remember that you can try to incorporate these strategies within daily routines that are already happening every day with your child. This includes meal times, getting dressed, and consider bath time and sitting in the car as your children are not going anywhere when they're in the bath or they're in their car seat. Use these opportunities to try and start an interaction. And make sure that it's fun so that your child will want to interact with you. These are some questions that we are asked regularly, so we thought that it might be helpful to discuss them. So if your child used to say single words but does not anymore, we would like to keep on encouraging you to model one-word utterances to your child throughout the day. Like I mentioned previously, we often like to focus on common requests such as help, open, more, and go. Remember, we want to use language at your child's level, so this would mean to use single words when labeling items as well, such as bath, eat, book, and ball. If you try to play with your child and they scream, then maybe try again tomorrow. We also encourage little baby steps in this process. First, you may need to start this process by simply sitting beside your child while they play and not say anything. It may be hard for them to even tolerate you sitting next to them while they're playing. Then in the next step, maybe just comment on what they're doing. It's okay to take it slow and to take baby steps in this process, and it may even have to happen over a longer period of time. We like to call this gentle intrusion. What if my child does not want to give up the item that they're playing with so that I can have a turn? We would actually encourage you to not take your child's toy, but instead choose something similar. So if your child is playing with a pig in the barn, choose a horse to play in the barn and join in on their play. You could model pretend play by pretending the horse is eating or sleeping or running, and again, imitate or mirror how your child is playing with their toy. Children love to see you copying what they are doing. Finally, if you can't understand what your child is saying to you, we use a strategy that's called taking your best guess to interpret. And this is interpreting what your child might be trying to say. Usually kids are pretty quick to correct us if we incorrectly guess what it is that they're trying to say. If your child is playing with a pig and they're saying, "Pih, pih," then you could take your best guess to interpret that they're trying to say pig, and you could respond, "Yes, pig. The pig is eating." This concludes the content of our workshop, and so we're hopeful that these strategies will help you and your child to achieve communication success. Thank you so much for joining us today. We hope that these strategies will be helpful for you and your child to achieve communication success.
Thank you for participating in Foundational Family Services provided by Grandview Kids. If you have questions, please connect with us. The presenters' email addresses are found in the description of this video. Visit grandviewkids.ca to learn more about Foundational Family Services and register for another workshop.